But I think there's a few things that we know to be true as we start thinking about how to align people. So maybe some mantras or some.
Oh,
is a mantra.
that was a mantra.
Or just a sound.
That's yeah.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Mugs Up Monday is a video we make up on days that go out a month.
Comes out on Mondays.
Yes.
We go mugs up every day. To be
Mugs up
honest.
every day here at Crema. But we put a video out on Mondays.
Yeah.
And to be fair, we haven't done it in a while.
Yeah. But we've got mugs.
Cheers.
And we've got a Monday. I'm Tyler.
I'm George.
I'm a product strategist here at Crema.
And I'm one of the founders and do a lot of product strategy as well. So what are we talking about today?
We're going to talk
Tyler?
about alignment.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I wanted to talk about, this is a conversation we've been having a lot lately around this idea that a lot of companies either come to us or we've come across companies or we worked with companies that, for lack of better words, just weren't aligned. And that might either be their internal teams weren't aligned, their leadership was not aligned, or like the teams didn't know what the leadership wanted, vendors weren't aligned. So like we're a vendor. I hate calling ourselves that. But that's
we vend things.
We vend things like a vending machine. But they weren't aligned. So there wasn't a clear expectations for what the heck are we trying to do here?
Yeah, it's kind of a big rat's nest of expectations and activity, and it's hard to know without a common framework how all of this can happen and still be meaningful and come out as a coherent thing. And so everybody brings different baggage and backgrounds to a project, and unless you proactively sort it out, it's really hard to do well.
Well, everybody has an idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's just whether or not those ideas are the same or even similar. So, somebody might get, we're building a technology solution, right? We're going to build an app, and it might be even in this app is for this purpose.
Yeah.
But then everybody starts going off and running, and somebody's creating the database for it, and somebody's creating the design for it, and somebody's selling it, and all these people might be literally building something different.
Yeah.
And so one of the challenges that we have is figuring out how do you align a diverse group of people, both on our team. So our team being made up of designers and developers and quality assurance and product managers and strategists, with product owners and clients and marketing and sales and everybody else. So how do you get all those people on the same page? So we're not going to get too much into the details, because this is something we're trying to flesh out right now to kind of figure out how we better create a framework around it. But I think there's a few things that we know to be true as we start thinking about how to align people. So maybe some mantras or some.
Oh,
is a mantra.
That was a mantra.
Well, or just a sound.
It's not.
Which I guess is a mantra. It can be.
It's Latin for
It's
alignment.
Oh, it's Latin for O. I think O is the same in all the languages.
You're probably right.
Okay. So we have a list because we're prepared.
Paper
doc.
Paper and pixels from Dropbox.
So I think one of the first things that we have found to be true is, as much as physically possible, keep it small. Mm-hmm. The more complex or simple, small, whatever word you want to use there. The more complex it gets, the harder it is to understand what's going on.
Yeah, and it's not just a matter of size, because even small teams can be working with complex products or situations, and small teams can make things complicated. It gets really hard to manage. And so the word I would use in that scenario is clarity and focused, because what happened, one cause of misalignment on teams is not just the size of the number of people on a project or the complexity of the task, but the varying directions that they're going in, or the various ways that they see value out of the project. And so if you can say, hey team, we're going to focus on this one aspect of the problem at this point in time, then that's going to be a whole lot more successful than saying, oh, we're just going to talk on Slack all the time. We're going to have daily stand-ups and things like that. Those things are helpful, but they alone are not helpful in maintaining or in creating alignment.
Yeah, and I think, just to be super tangible around it, the size of the team does matter, though.
It does.
There's a couple. This is a statement from way back when. I'm curious to see if he still believes this, but Jeff Bezos from Amazon had this rule that was kind of like the 2 pizza rule, and if your team is ever larger than what 2 pizzas can feed, then they're not going to work well together.
Yeah.
And I think that's just such a really easy thing to wrap your head around. And again, it means you're tight knit. It means that you're spending time together. I even like the food analogy because you get close together when you're eating, right?
Yeah.
I think a second thing is there was actually a white paper written around this idea called the Ringelmann
Effect.
The Ringelmann Effect.
Not the Ringling Brothers effect.
No. That immediately want to start singing The Greatest Showman
Do it.
songs. No, I'm not going to. I don't want to, but I'm not going to. No, so the Ringelmann Effect basically gets to the point of saying the larger an organization or a team gets, you have diminishing returns. So your efficiency, your quality starts diminishing the more people get involved. Now, that's not to say that you can't have a big organization. But what you need to be thinking about is that the teams stay small in those organizations, and they're focused on kind of small clarity pieces. So I think that allows you to kind of be focused around not saying it's not bad to have a big company.
Yeah.
It might be risky to have a big company if you're not keeping your teams small.
Yeah, and part of those diminishing returns comes from not just having the size of team, but because an inherently large team just has more things to worry about. And again, like saying, even to those teams, you're working on this piece of this one thing, having a similar lens to view that through is going to be a big deal. So you can have a big team as long as there's focus and clarity and good communication between the team.
I'm trying Eric Jorgensen, who's an entrepreneur and kind of a product guy at Zarly. He wrote a really great article that was around this idea that as a team grows in size as well, you have a communication issue. So that, I wish I knew the math, but basically it was like when you have 2 people together, it's just 2 people talking. There can be a lot of clarity between 2 people. When you have 3 people, now there's three ways of communication. 4 people, I think it immediately jumps to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5 people, and it's exponential, right? So like when you have a team of 20, there's like 700, hundreds of ways to communicate, and so communication gets broke down. Because if you ever played the game of telephone, where you saying something through a loop, things break, they're lost in translation, if you will. So keep it small, I think is a really good focus. And we do that when our strategy sessions. We really encourage our clients not to bring too many people, and we don't have too many people in the room, but the right people are in the room.
And sometimes clients will want to bring a whole bunch of people just to make sure that everybody's heard and that that the team has a good sense of identity and things like that. And so, and we don't want to discourage that, but we want to make sure that it gets focused in the right way and used effectively.
Just keep talking. Can you just come over here a little bit? Can you see that? Oh gosh, so close. Keep going. You can't even see how full it is. Oh yeah. Sorry, I care what you were saying. Oh, good pour over.
But that's good coffee.
I think that's so true. Clients constantly. And it's not to say that it can't be done. It just makes it harder.
Yeah, and alignment can't come from everybody. If alignment comes from, if we believe that alignment comes from every direction, that gets really problematic in terms of making decisions and owning them. And that's another Jeff Bezos piece is the Sentient Commit, where he says you can have a discussion about a decision, you can hash it out, but at some point somebody needs to make a decision, and the team, as a leadership team, you need to be willing to say, we don't totally agree with this, we understand why we're going with it though, and we are going to commit to it as a team and go in that direction. Because once you have discussion and you disagree and somebody makes a decision, and then part of that team goes away and does their own thing, it's not just a matter of misalignment at the leadership team level, but an entire division of a company, or an entire
it can have
part of the product.
It's like being 1 degree off.
Yeah,
it can have a huge impact.
Yeah, and so then it's not just like it can be gobs of time and money wasted just because some folks didn't want to have shit out and have an honest discussion.
Yeah, along those same lines, the company agency Clear Left, London-based agency, they do great work. They wrote an article called "Consent Over Consensus," and it's just such a simple framework to think about the fact that you're not going to get everybody 100% aligned. Or no, that's right. I want to get everybody aligned to agree. So everybody might not say like, yeah, I 100% agree that is definitely what we have to do, and all aspects of it are true. And we like write it in blood someplace. Just got really cult.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Blood.
We're very serious about our work around here.
Product.
But instead, to say, like you said, is that at a certain point you have to make a decision. Like sometimes in the race to find alignment, a decision is never made.
Yeah.
And so I think make a decision. The only reason, and what this article talks about, the only reason that you would not go with that decision, if somebody can make a valid argument that it would hurt the project or the organization or the people involved, it would actually cause pain or it would hurt them to do it that way.
Yeah. Well, and that actually reminds me of another aspect to this is a lot of times when we talk about big projects or things that we need to commit to, we think it has to be a massive project or a massive product decision. And instead, if there's a lot of dissent, you can break that project or that decision down into smaller decisions and say, we're going to go with this one, and it's going to go 1/10 of the way that this full project would go, because we need to be in a learning and discovery mode rather than just a full-on go mode. You could even say, you two go in that one direction, go in this direction, and then you go in this other direction. And so that way you're getting more feedback about the entire process.
But everybody has alignment that that's what's happening.
Right. Yeah. And so that way you can come back, you can do that, and you come back, and everybody says, you know what, that actually didn't work the way that I thought it did. Let's go with this other guy's idea.
So that doesn't preclude that, like, alignment doesn't mean that you're not going to have failure, and that's okay. Failure is an okay thing because you learn from it. But I think that's really interesting, as long as people understand that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think that also can only happen if you have very clear, and this is kind of our next item here, but this very clear vision, mission, values, and kind of the why behind it.
Yep.
Like, why are we doing this thing? And I think that often needs to come from a leadership position, or at least someone who's owning the idea. And then that I think more than anything needs to be bought into by everyone involved.
Yep.
Do we know why we're doing this? Great. Do we know what values influence what we're trying to create? So we were listening to a podcast recently that was talking about the fact that they were blown away by the fact that a lot of these startups, a lot of these really fast scaling Silicon Valley companies actually would make decisions based off their values. And I thought we do that here, but I'm reminded how many companies don't do that.
Yeah, because for a couple of reasons, the values aren't actually what the company believes. They're not infused throughout the entire company, or just one person kind of says, you know what, those are nice values, but for this project, we actually need to do this.
Yeah.
And those values are often perceived to be at odds with making money or fulfilling the mission. And so there's you can have a vision and mission and values, but your product is totally out of sync with that, and how that product makes money. And there's a lot of social media that is finding that out the hard way, where you have these certain values, but your product is actually not quite. Yeah, your product is in some ways fundamental misalignment with those values, and it's really hard to fix.
Yeah, so if you don't have a clearly stated, and then just being reminded of it all the time. Yeah. I think that's a discipline, just to have to be reminded of it, and asking the question, does this align with what we set out to do? Yeah,
and for another thing that values do, especially, like George said, we're pretty good about that here at Crema, where values give people a means of exercising freedom, so they know where the boundaries of certain decisions are, or how to handle certain situations. And I can say, if I handle this situation in a certain way, is that fulfilling our value of generosity or transparency? And if it's not, then I can say, well, George, I have this hard decision to make. Yeah. I feel like this is the most transparent way to handle it. What do you think? And they establish clear boundaries for us as a company, but also within a product team, because we want to help other companies build products in a way that are consistent with our values, because we think that's
good way to do good work. Yeah. And I think that's a great segue into what we're trying to get to, is the ability to allow people to get work done. right? So alignment is only there so that people can go get their jobs done and that we can actually build the world that we want to live in. And I think what you're kind of having to put a framework around is, does everybody have that shared alignment? Has a decision been made? Do we have clarity into what everybody's roles and responsibilities are? So there's just that kind of clarity piece, again, that goes with the alignment. And then a way to have solid accountability. So what happens when that starts to get misaligned, or when somebody doesn't come back and actually deliver on the thing that they said they were going to do? So I think that's super, super important.
Yeah. And setting that accountability up front as well, so that when if one of these rules is, if this happens, then we're going to have to talk about this. So that way I, as somebody else on the team, when we're having that conversation, I kind of have expectations about where I might have failed or missed something, and what's going to happen next. Yeah. So there's just constant transparency throughout.
I was going to drop in transparency. I think that's exactly right. And I think that transparency has to start with leadership again. So if you're casting that vision, mission, why, values, that's one thing, but then there has to be a transparency around what are our guidelines, what are our constraints. Is it money? Is it time? Is it stakeholder approval? Is it investors? Whatever that is, everyone needs to understand those constraints so that they can all navigate inside of it. Once there's transparency there, then people can again get back to do their work. And then really what that allows us to do as peers and as leadership and as employees or vendors or whatever that relation is to really have trust and autonomy. Yeah. And if you can, when that's actually achieved, it's so cool.
It's kind of crazy.
It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
I think it takes it's like a capital. You have to build up that capital. Yeah. So that then you can say, now we trust each other. We all have clarity. And I'll just throw in, sometimes you just gotta get awkward. Oh, yeah. So like our sprint alignment, or our sprint retrospectives, it's like asking the same annoying questions every single time of like, what did we accomplish? What went well? What didn't go well? And nobody really wants to talk about this stuff. It's like, just let me get on to the next thing that we gotta do. But being disciplined to go through that. Yeah. And then even getting ready for it, being like, does everyone have a clear vision? And then setting that goal for the sprint. Yeah. So like, we know that we're going to accomplish this sprint. Yeah. And in the sprint retrospectives and really throughout the project, at times daily, that's important. It's important to kind of engage that awkwardness or engage that alignment approach, just minor calibrations, because when you need a big alignment, then you have, like you said, the capital to actually make those statements or say, hey, you know what, like this was a big deal. And we've had a couple of those recently, not huge ones, but like, hey, we need to have a talk about how things are going. And because we had built up some equity in the relationship through transparency and through communication and previous alignment on other things, and a willingness to be vulnerable in a way and say, hey, you know what, we missed this, we need to talk about this. There was a real strong sense of good faith that we're all wanting to get to the right thing. Yeah. It's not about us saving face or blaming somebody else. It's just like, you know what, this isn't going to help us make the best product. How do we have a conversation? We just learned something. What do we do with that thing that we just learned? Yeah, and it goes both ways, and that's just a really hard human thing to do. Well, and I think that gets to the point of like that alignment's never done, right? Yeah. It's always something that you have to keep working on. Yeah, and it's just like lean or agile. You're constantly saying, let's iterate on this, let's refine this, let's get this right. Yep. You know what's something we didn't talk about? We talked about small chunks to consider with really clear expectations. Keep it quiet? Keep it quiet. Yeah. I think this is like an aha moment for me, something I learned recently. I'm an extrovert. True that. You might not have noticed that. I'm an ambivert. I'm not at all. I know you Dan is an ambivert as well. No, but I think an exercise that we've stolen from another agency that does this really well in design sprints is keep it quiet. So when you're doing any type of alignment session or activities, which we can get more into activities later, one of the tips is to find ways to allow everyone's voice to be heard. So that could happen on a micro level of, in a strategy session, use sticky notes as a way to collect all the ideas and then put them up on the wall, let people read them themselves. Don't allow the extrovert in the room to be the one that's just like takes over brainstorming.
Yeah, dominating.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's okay sometimes, but a lot of times it's very distracting. And then all the introverts are basically like, I'm not aligned, but I don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
You know, and so they're never aligned, but they never will have the opportunity to voice that or express that.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of introverts as well, my wife included, prefer time to process things internally.
Yeah.
And so in these strategy alignment sessions, we've been talking about ways to prepare folks that like to think that way ahead of time, so that when they get into strategy sessions, they've already processed some of these things.
Yeah.
And because those introverts, because they process differently, often provide value that extroverts and
that I'll never
introverts-
see.
Yeah, and we absolutely want that kind of thinking. And so how do we change the way that we work to get the best input out of everybody in the room, not just the ones that are most vocal.
And then I think you could take that out throughout the rest of the project as you continue to stay communicating through using tools like Slack or using communication methods that allow people to speak without having to be kind of always feel like they're doing public speaking effectively.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful tool. It's technology that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
We've never had in human history to be able to facilitate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then even it could be if you're in a massive organization. I was listening to Masters of Scale, and Reid Hoffman was talking about how Marissa Myers, is that right?
Yeah.
From
Mayor.
Yahoo.
Marissa Mayer.
Mayor?
No S.
I don't know how to say it. Sorry.
Can we look?
I'm sure you're listening to this. She's not listening. She talked about creating an organization at Yahoo when she first came in, and she was trying to right the ship, right? She basically said, I want feedback from everyone in the company about how we could create new lines of revenue and that would make so many millions of dollars a year extra. And what was really interesting is she thought she'd get like 6, or she thought she'd get a dozen, and that they would greenlight like 6. I think she got like 800 ideas.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and they greenlit 200 of them.
Yeah.
And they ended up making an additional $1 billion or more worth of revenue. But again, it was because they created a way for people to speak into, maybe speak people that would have never spoken to it before, and they were stressed autonomy to allow people to do that. And then, of course, you have to get people aligned around why and create structures on that. So that was just interesting.
No, that's good.
So I guess what we want to hear from you is, how do you get aligned? Or is that something you struggle with? Because we think this is actually a big value that Crema's kind of figured out. Not perfectly, but we're doing some things that are working
Nice
really,
little
really well.
heuristic.
Yeah. And so we're actually trying to gather up feedback around, one, are your teams misaligned? Or do you feel like you're in an organization that isn't aligned? Maybe it's not that you're the leadership, but that you're in an org or on a team that you're like, I'm the quiet one, or I'm the person that I've been saying something and just we're not on the same page. We're never actually getting anything completely done because everybody's running in different directions. Is that a pain point? I think it is a pain point, but is it a pain point you feel? Let us know.
Yeah.
Link in the comments. I don't know, how do we do that? Email us. Larissa, how do you want them to contact us?
Where do you want the link to go?
Well, there's comments on every platform.
Why don't you comment
Comments are down
below?
there.
We'll pin your comment. And if you give us any
Personally.
comments, that'll be more than we have now. So please do. No, but give us feedback.
Yeah.
Are you experiencing this? And do you think that your organization could get on board with finding ways to solve that problem? Because that's something we want to start doing here.
Yeah. I think that's it.
All right. I don't remember how we wrap these up, but I guess until next time, happy mugs up.
Mugs up. Oh, jeez.
I was getting excited.
Whoa! We're finally done.
Did you feel that earthquake?
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click that bell so you get notified each time we produce a new video. And I hope that you liked this video and you'll actually give us a thumbs up, a like on here. And be sure to check out the other videos that we've created around product management, design, technology, rapid prototyping, basically all that it takes to build a great product team and a great product. And if you need help building your product, definitely check out Crema.us. So what we do is we help funded entrepreneurs through innovative enterprises build new technology that helps them scale. Thanks guys for watching.